Welcome to your best bets. Second episode of this week. Like I said, long layoff, but we're back with some new shows. Tonight, excited about this one. It's a little bit different episode than we've had before. Zach Fitzgerald is here. We're going to discuss the state of quarterback play in the NFL this season. We got a top 10 list to compare of quarterbacks we picked for one single game, and just kind of go through the list of guys that we maybe have been impressed by and disappointed by this season. Zach, as we've talked about before, we talk about a lot about golf when you're on, but you've told me all along NFL is your game. So let's bring it tonight. You ready?
I am. I'm excited to be back. I think we were talking, and it's been somewhere between 3 and 4 months, which is kind of hard to believe that time's flying that fast. But yeah, I do play golf, but I feel like I'm more knowledgeable about football. I watch football more than I watch golf. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about football.
Last football show we did was previewing the Super Bowl. Um,
Mhm.
Last time you were on was I think we were right in the middle of the city tournament with one of our city summaries. So good to have you back. I know it's been a second. All right, let's get right into it. Right before we started recording, I was just mentioning to you that um, the quarterback play in the NFL is so critical to a team's success. I think it's still the most important position in sports. Um, I can't remember a time the last, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years in the NFL where I felt like there's been more bad quarterback play than we've seen this season. Is that a fair take, or do you see it another way?
I mean, I think visually it looks worse. I think that maybe if you dive a little deeper, we're disrespecting defenses a little bit in the defensive schemes that they're coming up with to, take care of some of the schemes that the offenses have you know, dealt with in the last 5 years or so. But it's kind of like an ebb and flow. If you remember, I mean, a lot of times offenses are really, really good, for a couple years because they figured out a new way to manipulate the defenses, and then defenses catch up, and you have guys coming from teams that have worked, with these offensive coordinators and seen the way that it works. So then they kind of trickle that out into their coaching tree, and then you got to find new ways. So I think visually, yes, it's looked worse. I think some guys look great. Obviously, the cream is kind of rising to the top. Your guys that can adapt and deal with any of the defensive schemes that they come into. But I'm not sure if it's that people are worse. I just think that defenses are playing better.
It does seem like overall scoring is down this season
Hmm.
compared to previous seasons.
Hmm.
It feels like we got a lot of games that are 6-3 at the half, and they end up being 17-14 kind of games, and
Hmm.
overall that feels different. It's interesting. We have a lot of good teams that have some poor quarterback play this season. We were talking about the Jets before we went live. They're a perfect example of, I think, a really good roster. They built a
Hmm.
really good roster, but Zach Wilson's clearly holding them back, as evidenced by their loss to the Patriots, um, and
And
vice
does
versa.
not think he is.
Does not think he is, which is a clear self awareness
Hmm.
issue. Um,
Yeah.
which who knows? We might be seeing Mike White as early as this weekend, and um,
Yep.
I think they might be scarier with Mike White out there, as we saw how well he played
Agreed.
last year, and then also vice versa. We see a lot of bad teams that have had some signs that maybe they got a good quarterback, or it's a younger guy that's displaying some of the qualities you want to see as a future franchise quarterback, Justin Fields. Um, so you run the whole gamut here, but I mean, I did this exercise today of sort of going through my rankings, and I said I basically gave each team a either passing or fail grade at quarterback, and I only came up with 14 guys that I felt like are playing above average football. Um, I know your exercise was maybe slightly different than me, but again, that just feels way low when half the league is playing quarterbacks are playing subpar. And I don't know what that is besides the defense. We've seen guys like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Those are the three, I guess, superstars who have not played anywhere near the level that they've played the last few years. I think Wilson might be the most startling step back of the three. I mean, he has been objectively terrible this season.
I think we're starting to hear a lot of things trickle out of, Seattle's locker room now that he's gone, and that they don't just want to protect him. Maybe he's not as much of the golden boy as what he puts off
Yeah.
all the time. And this report that he's calling Seattle's audibles in week 9 or week 10 of the NFL season. It, either he's not studying well, or he's getting confused, which is odd for a guy that's getting paid that much money and was thought to be, a cerebral quarterback. I mean, it's not like he's considered a physical quarterback. He's not large. His arm is good, but he just doesn't seem the same this year. And I don't think physically he could have lost that much. I mean, it's got to be attitude. So that's more concerning, honestly.
Yeah. Plus, he's kind of fucking weird too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he's really ventured into some weird behavior this year.
Mm-hmm.
The Also, I didn't mention Super Bowl winning quarterback Matt Stafford. I mean, he's had injuries. His offensive line has been terrible. Not a lot of weapons, but he hasn't looked good either. So it's been interesting. Who are the guys that have really impressed you? I mean, there's some obvious ones out there that maybe have really taken a huge jump forward this year.
Hurts obviously impresses me. I spent most of last year. I think we did that. Your quarterbacks in the playoffs last year ranking, and he was either second or third from the bottom for me. And certainly he's played great, and he's disproven me. I'm not saying that I'm won over yet, but he has impressed me. Tua has impressed me, honestly. I don't know if it's scheme or if it's just that Tua has finally kind of calmed down and has gotten it a little bit more. But he has impressed me. And I think we'll get into some more people as we go through our rankings here.
Yeah, those were the two that jumped out at me. That the guys that I wouldn't have had in anywhere near a top 10 list prior to the season. I did talk about Hurts. I do have to count this as a win for me a little bit. But in the preseason show with Tim, I said watch out for Hurts, watch out for the Eagles. I didn't see them playing this well. His accuracy's gotten a lot better. I think that was something notable last year when he, especially in the playoff game, I felt like he was missing open guys. But that offense seems to fit him. They have built an offense that fits his skill set. What a novel idea by offensive guys starting to do that. Nick Sirianni seems to at least have built a system that fits his skill set, and they have really good players. And Tua, I couldn't have been more wrong about him now. It helps to have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, probably the fastest set of receivers that have ever hit the field together.
For sure.
I mean, Tyreek Hill's having a historic year as a wide receiver. However, I mean, Tua's been good. I mean, he's been accurate and he's done exactly what that offense is needed to do. Now he just has to stay on the field. I mean, it kind of feels like he's one hit away from maybe missing the season if he gets another concussion. But those two guys stood out to me. Geno Smith, left for dead a couple times. I mean, that's probably the most shocking thing quarterback-wise we've seen this year. I mean, he's been one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the league. So that was one of the other ones that I had on my list. He's not going to make my top 10 for one game, but he's been one of the 10 best guys this season.
Agreed.
Let's talk about let's hit the Colts for a second. As a Colts guy, you made a comment on social, and I kind of sarcastically wrote something back about Jeff Saturday. You obviously seem to. Well, I don't want to make any assumptions. How do you feel about the Saturday move? Just the state of the Colts midway through the season here.
I think the state of the Colts is atrocious, but I mean, I'm not gonna say either thing about the Jeff Saturday. I don't lean either way really. I mean, I think he needs to be given an opportunity to prove himself. Was he the first person that should have been in line for the job? Probably not. But now that he's there, I mean, we got to give him a fair shake. Maybe this works out, maybe it doesn't. But what I was saying is somebody had made a comment about him saying that he was a leader of men, and you had made a comment, and I really do think in that locker room he can be. I mean, I think he's very well respected in that locker room, and if he gets the right offensive coaches and the defensive coaches around him, certainly his job is to manage men, not necessarily build the offensive game plan or the defensive game plan. It's to manage the entire operation, and he may be able to do that. Now, at the same time, I think you could absolutely be right. I mean, he could just this could be just a little sideshow at the end of this year, and then maybe the Colts try to figure something out, or maybe it works out. I don't know. But
Yeah.
the way that the Colts are right now, it's terrible. I mean, who cares that who cares?
I I was gonna say is maybe it's a Ted Lasso situation.
Mm-hmm.
He comes in, he just motivates guys and
Mm-hmm.
tries to make everyone happy and play better. For me, it's just the Colts. They got to fix the quarterback position after this season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what the Matt Ryan contract situation is. I don't know if it was just a 1 year deal. I'm not sure what he has left on his contract, but I mean they've been trying to get this right since Andrew Luck retired. They have some options out there. Maybe they just want to trade for someone like Derek Carr and keep going down this path. But I feel like that's just something that they got to figure out one way or the other this offseason. But I'll be interested to see. I still think there's some talent there. Um, all I know is that the Jeff Saturday situation it brought Bill Cowher to tears, and that made me laugh incredibly hard. Actually, the whole fallout from the Jeff Saturday thing was
Yeah.
the best. It was the best thing
Yes,
this season.
I agree. It was fantastic.
All right, let's get into our list here. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about as far as
Mhm.
these guys, how they're built and why we have them ranked in a certain spot. But top 10 quarterbacks we would pick for one single game. If it was a playoff game, Super Bowl game, whatever. Who do you have at number 10?
Number 10, I have Dak.
Okay.
Uh, I have Dak because he has a veteran presence. I don't think he makes a lot of mistakes, and he can somewhat use his legs. So uh, I picked Dak because everybody that I have below him, I just don't trust at all this year. So he just kind of slid into that 10 spot.
No, I was watching them play the Packers a couple weeks ago, and obviously the Cowboys are good. I mean, they are a real contender.
Mm-hmm.
I like their team a lot, and more than I thought I would. But I mean, it's kind of interesting. He ran a lot more, scrambled a lot more early in his career, even some
Mm-hmm.
design runs. You don't see that very often. I kind of like to see them build that back into the offense for him because he is athletic. He can pick up some, easy cheap yards with some of those design runs. I have Dak on my list, but I have him a little higher. My number 10 is Tua. Tua is number 10 for me. And obviously, based on his play this year, he is tops in many statistical categories: rating, completion percentage, pretty much all the efficiency measures. He is right there, number one or number two. Again, great offense, an offense that's built for him, an offensive mind that built that offense. So he's got a lot of great pieces around him, but he's doing exactly what he needs to do. Now, if I had Tua starting for me in a playoff game, and shout out to my friend Drew Davis if he's listening, huge Dolphins guy. I don't know how great I'd feel about it if I was going against a defense, say like the Cowboys who can really rush the passer.
Mm-hmm.
Might make me a little nervous, but I guess I don't want to. I can't really say much until I see him in that situation this season in a playoff game. Do you have two on your list?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead with number 9.
I have Lamar at number 9, and I think Lamar could be higher. I think Lamar has the ability to be better than a lot of the people that are above him. My issue with Lamar, and if we're talking about a single game, is Lamar just doesn't seem to me to always have the ability to make the throw when it absolutely has to happen. And I just don't think that those running lanes are always going to be there. It's been proven that that's been the case. So for me, I think he's an excellent quarterback. I think he's proved every single person that doubted him in the draft wrong, obviously. But for me, the 8 people above him, I would trust their arms in a situation that they had to make that throw more than him.
Okay, that's fair. I have Lamar on my list. He's higher. Um, he got his first playoff win last year, right?
Mhm.
Finally, he got the monkey off his back. But those are all fair criticisms. I'll talk about him a little more when we get to him. My number nine is Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he's been one of the three or four best players or quarterbacks this season. I just need to see a little more before I can rank him in front of these guys as far as trustworthiness in a playoff game. Didn't play great in his one game last year. I know he's a different player now. Um, by the way, he's far exceeded anything I ever thought he'd be in the NFL coming out of
Mhm.
Alabama, then Oklahoma.
Mhm.
So uh, I expect him to climb as he just gets more experience. But right now, I have him at number
That surprises me. I thought he would be much, much higher on your list.
9.
I have him at number 8. So that was where I thought we would have our first disagreement, and I cannot believe that I have him higher than you. I'm so surprised. You know, a lot of surprising things when I was doing the stats about Hertz, and really looking at his stats makes me want to put him higher. But for all the reasons you said are the reasons he's at number 8. But he has thrown 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions this year. So it's not as if he's been prone to making huge mistakes. He's completing 68% of his passes, which was probably the most astounding stat to me. I never looked at him as a guy that was, uh, accurate necessarily. He's rushed for 440 yards, which is nothing to cough at, and he has 8 rushing touchdowns. So, I mean, he's having, I would say, statistically the best year of any of the quarterbacks on this list. But I don't know that. Again, obviously, with where I put him, and I guess with where you put him, we kind of see him the same. But he's having a great year, and I think he has potential to ascend to be much higher, which, as you've already said, is so much better than what I ever expected him to be in the NFL.
And his running ability, as you mentioned, I mean, it makes him a true dual threat. There's been a couple games this year where I know he's had close to 100 yards. Always a threat in the red zone for running the ball as well, as we saw at the end of the Colts game the other day. Yeah, I'm hugely impressed. I just need to see more from him. Um, Number 8, I have Dak. Um, kind of half-hearted about it. This is where I struggled the most at the bottom of the top 10. Um, he's one of those guys where I feel like he gets kind of streaky. Like the other day against the Vikings, like that's Dak almost hitting the ceiling. I mean, he's making all the throws, and um, it's you can easily go the other way with him though, where it feels like if he loses confidence, he makes some shaky throws, like the playoff game last year against San Fran. Some of the decisions he made there at the end of that game weren't ideal, to say the least. But again, I don't know. I feel some sort of solid presence with him. Uh, if he were my quarterback, just some sort of trustworthiness. Again, I trust experience
Mhm.
um, uh, with this one game situation, maybe more than I should. But that's why I placed Dak a little bit higher than Hurts in two. Number
Fair
7.
enough. I have two at 7. Um, he's just really impressed me this year. He's young, but he just seems to make good decisions. He has 2,265 yards playing only 8 games. Uh, I think if you put that out yards per game, he would be in second or so place in overall yards. He has 18 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, and he's completing 71% of his passes. So uh, to me, I mean, I just think he's having a fantastic year, and obviously goes with the game plan. Yes, he has Waddle and he has Hill, and you're talking about what happens if he plays Dallas's defense that blitzes a lot. And the thing is he just throws quick passes to Waddle or to Hill, which leaves less people in the backfield for them to have to run around to score touchdowns. So I truly actually think that those two guys negate a lot of blitzes, because you just can't have everybody in front of them. Then you got two or three people behind. The minute they catch the ball, they're gone. So uh, I would trust Tua, and I think this is the point in the list that everything after this, we're talking about guys that you feel fairly comfortable with at this point that they're going to bring the game to you. So I think this is kind of, on every list we've ever had, there's like a line of like, okay, here's where we get to like the people that we're really thinking about. And I think this is the line right here.
Okay. I completely agree about. I mean, you're right. That's a great point about the quick passing game. And again, the skill players for the Dolphins are perfectly suited for that. I mean, Tyreek Hill is. I mean, I don't know if a guy that's just more terrifying to go against your team. I mean, when the Bears played them a couple of weeks ago, I mean, they basically gave him 15 yards because they were just terrified of him going deep,
Mm-hmm.
which you can. That's one maybe the knock against Tua is arm strength. You know, he can't really get it down the field the way he needs to for these guys. But quick passing game has been devastating for them this year. All right, number seven. This is I kind of struggle with these two. I have Justin Herbert at number seven, and I love Justin Herbert. I ranked him this low because although I know, like I said, I think I said this one of the podcasts last year that he might be the second or third most just talented quarterback from a skill set. I put him up there with Mahomes and Allen. His arm strength ridiculous. He has athletic ability. He makes throws that you just don't see other guys make. I just again, maybe it's a Chargers thing. Like every Chargers game feels the same. Every Chargers season feels the same, and so maybe that's weighed down my feeling about Herbert. In this organization is he's kind of become one of those typical Chargers players where he makes these wild plays, but then he's made some bonehead interceptions at times. So for me, if I needed a quarterback for one game, he'd fall here because although he has the talent to win any game, he just again might just be a little bit more experience that I would need from him to rank him higher. So Justin Herbert number seven for me.
That's very surprising to me. I'm looking at the rest of my list and I'm trying to figure out who you put above him that's not on my list. So,
Huh. I'll go ahead with my number six because you've already talked about him, and it's Lamar Jackson.
okay.
I
Oh,
swap I
there you go.
swapped these two, Lamar and Herbert, quite a bit at 6 and 7. I landed on Lamar because I trust his dual threat ability more. Although, again, he's not got a great playoff record. Um, I I just feel like again this is his fifth season. He's learned a lot from his failures in playoffs. He's not having like a standout season. I would say it's a solid season right now. Um, I wish the Ravens had a few more guys around him to really help him. You know, besides Mark Andrews and they really can't run the ball. But if we're just talking about from a player, a quarterback standpoint, I still like Lamar a lot. So that's why I have him here. Who's your number six?
I have Tom Brady at number six.
Okay.
Um, I think Tom is regressing. I think we're seeing the first time that he has slightly physically regressed. Now, mentally, obviously, he's not regressing. He's going through a lot, I would say, personal life wise, but um, just on experience, being a veteran, and decision making alone, I don't think he could be any lower than six on this list. I would trust the game in Tom Brady's hands, obviously. The five people above him, I just think physically are better at this point, and I trust them mentally as much, enough as much for the physical tools to outweigh his regression at the moment.
There's got to be a part of him that wishes he just would have stayed retired, right?
No,
No,
no.
for this
I
Bucks
think he
team.
no. I think he loves football. So look at what he's done. I mean, he obviously him coming back to football ruined his marriage, and he knew that was going to happen. He had to have. It's not. He's not a dumb man. So I could see him playing another 5 years and trying it. obviously, if his family is not what he wanted his identity to be for the near future, he obviously chose football over that. There could be more things below it. That does not make him a bad guy, but football is his identity. He's the greatest of all time. That's always how he's going to be remembered, is as a football player. And it's football. I just think he loves football and the team aspect of it so much that he's going to go down until literally his arm falls off. And I'm fine with that. He's
So,
earned it.
yeah. Yeah, fair assessment. Yeah. So you have Brady at 6. Who's your 5?
Rodgers is 5. And I think that that surprises you. I think you thought he was going to be higher. And I still do think that, he's an excellent quarterback and he has looked rough this year. He lost Devonta Adams, which was a majority of the targets that he threw to last year. And Devonta is good enough to make it happen. But he has not gelled well with the wide receivers that he has so far this year, aside from maybe Christian Watson in the last 2 games. Um, Offensive line has looked terrible to me. I mean, it just looks like he's running for his life at all times, or getting sacked, or unhappy about play calls. So obviously, there's some issue there. I watch him on the McAfee show every Tuesday, and his attitude just leaves me at ease. I mean, it's not as if he's out there angry at everybody. He's just telling people to relax and everything will be fine. And there's a calming aspect to somebody who has played forever, who has achieved so much, that now is just kind of like still has that fire, but has realized that it's not everything anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he's just calmly condescending to his teammates.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, they calmly need to start playing better. I mean,
Yeah, but
it's
he
not
does
as if
too.
the two-time MVP just automatically lost it in a year. It doesn't happen. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know.
it
I think
doesn't.
I don't know. So Brady has changed the way we think about older quarterbacks, aging
Hmm.
quarterbacks. But historically, it's like 37, 38, and normally these guys are done. I mean, I haven't put it out of the possibility. And I say this as a Bears fan, and I can't stand the Packers and can't stand Packers quarterbacks going back since I was a kid, both of them. But I mean, I'm not discounting that he may just be washed. I mean,
Oh,
but
he's not washed.
I've
Have you?
I've
I mean,
I've
he can
he
still make
looks
every throw.
sure, but he just
So is
looked.
his brain gone? I mean, I guess I
I
don't
don't know.
understand like
He I
what would make him washed
I'm
if
just
he
what
can
I'm
still
just
make every throw
sure.
and he can
I'm telling
still
you what my
think.
eyes are seeing this season.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
The Thursday night game against the Titans, like he did not look good. I
hey,
mean,
he's
I'm
running
being
for his life.
I
No
understand that.
quarterback looks good when they're running for their life.
I understand that. I
I
understand that.
watched Patrick Mahomes look atrocious in the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers. I mean, like he should not have even played the next year. He was that bad in the Super Bowl.
I'm just making a point that yeah, Rodgers may after this season he may come back and
Mhm.
win MVP next year. I just think there's a chance that like Matt Stafford looks like he's washed this year. Russell Wilson looks. I mean, all these older quarterbacks this year, it's not been their year. Um, I still have
Matt
Roger.
Stafford and Russell Wilson do not belong in the same sentence as Aaron Rodgers when we're talking about spectrum of greatness of quarterbacks. I mean,
I'm not comparing the resume or skill. I'm just making a point that sometimes it's just like a flip switches or switch flips here
mhm.
um, on these guys that are in their mid to late 30s. I mean, Rogers is young. He's
Yeah,
30,
and that's
38.
fair, but and you could see it with Manning. I mean, you could see his arm was
Mm-hmm.
gone. I mean, gone, and you can see it a little bit with uh with Brady that his deep ball just isn't quite there anymore. And as we were talking before, you don't see it with Russell Wilson that his throws aren't there. With him, it seems to be mental. But with Rodgers, I mean, everything's still there. It's just he's constantly running for his life, and he hasn't meshed well with any of the young wide receivers. So, that makes it awfully difficult. I think we forget that maybe like 3 or 4 years ago before Devontae Adams like really ascended. He kind of had a struggling year there too when, you know, he didn't quite have the receivers. So receivers are really a lot of everything, which is why Russell Wilson's not getting a pass. He has Judy, he has Sutton, he has multiple
Oh yeah.
weapons. So this is not an issue of weapons here. And this is also why like guys like Trevor Lawrence, it's time for him to step up because they paid Kirk all that money and he's actually somewhat living up to that hype. So I just don't think for me, when you say the words washed, Rodgers does not belong in that category. And I still don't think Brady belongs in that category. Peyton
Just
Manning, his last year was washed,
I
and
said
he's my favorite quarterback ever.
maybe it's
No,
worth it's just it's on my radar. He's on the wash radar. I have him higher than you do on the rankings. So it's not like I am I
I,
I don't I'm just saying if I had to pick a quarterback for a game today, he's still high in my rankings, but I'm concerned about his he is not one of my top 10 players this year. I mean, uh
no.
quarterbacks. I'm sorry, quarterbacks this year. I mean, he's just he's not been good. But again, I still have confidence in him. So that was your number five pick. My number five pick
Correct.
was Tom Brady was my number five. I echo a lot of what you said there. Um, I feel every week I'm just waiting for this Bucks team to get going, and it's they had a good game against the Seahawks in Germany. We'll see if that propels them forward. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you know what you're getting with Brady as long as he gets reasonable protection. Um, it seems like he's got a little bit of that getting the ball out early kind of thing this year. It doesn't seem like he's loving getting hit. But again, he's 45 years old. Um, right in front of him, I do have Aaron Rodgers at 4. Um, so I struggled a little bit, but for me, there was all the reasons we talked about why he'd be there. Amazing experience. Can still make all the throws. He's got that chip on his shoulder for life, I'm sure. Uh, and I like that in a big game. Now, his playoff record is not good. I knew, by the way, I knew the Aaron Rodgers thing was going to be just the biggest point of contention.
Mhm.
But I have him ranked higher. I want to be clear. I mean,
You do.
but this guy has lost a lot of playoff games as a favorite, a home favorite, like last year against the Niners. So I talk about experience a lot, but he's had a lot of letdowns in the playoffs. It's been
Hmm.
pretty disappointing the last couple of years, especially when the Packers
Hmm.
had a really good team around them. I think we can close the book on Rodgers here for this discussion. Who'd you have at number 4?
Number 4, I have Justin Herbert.
I'm
And
shocked you had him this high. Shocked.
really,
Yeah.
I honestly could have put Justin Herbert at 2. I think he's that good. We're talking about not what he's done this year with no wide receivers, zero wide receivers. Keenan Allen's played 2 games and is not honestly. If you want to talk about a guy that might be washed, it's Keenan Allen, and that's very sad for me to say. Mike Williams has played 2 games, just came back, did not look himself yesterday. Um, I think, I mean, Herbert has thrown for 2,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on 66% passing, and he hasn't had his top 2 wide receivers the entire year. I think his top target it might be Everett, in all honesty.
Mhm.
So I just think that uh, for me, I think any of the 2, 3, and 4 are almost interchangeable. I think a discussion could be made for any of those positions of who I have there to all be interchanged. For me, I just put him here because the 2 above him and obviously number 1. I just think that with how they're playing this year and overall how I feel about them would just put them higher at this point. But it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if in 5 years we're saying Herbert's the best quarterback on this list. So
Sure.
uh, I just think he has every tool you can possibly imagine. Uh,
Yeah. The,
so
I
I,
agree with you. The ceiling is there for sure. I disagree with
the
saying
biggest shock of this to me is gonna be you having him at 7. That's
we said today. I just again the talent, I put him in the top 3 or 4. But
Mhm.
I don't think he's interchangeable right now with the guys that are 2 and 3 on the list.
Okay.
Okay, who do you got at 3?
Who do you have it for?
Rogers.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah.
3, I have Allen. And
Hmm. Okay. I had a
yeah,
feeling. I had a feeling because
yeah, I mean,
I know your love for the guy number
you
2.
know, is he number 2 or is he number 1?
I,
You never know.
I
So,
let's
uh, so I have Allen, and my reasoning behind Allen is simply I just think he makes more mistakes than the two people above him. He certainly is a better runner than the two people above him.
Mhm.
But he also only passes for 64%, which, isn't terrible. It's not like that's, below the Mendoza line if we're talking about baseball, um, but we are talking about, 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He does rush 483 yards, and certainly that's going to help you, but uh,
He is
I just
mistake.
I
He is mistake prone.
he
He's leading the NFL in interceptions. That's concerning.
Well, I think that he's like the most Favre guy that's in the league right now. He's just very gunslinger like and very, very exciting to watch. I mean, he might be my favorite guy to watch in the NFL. He's super fun to watch. I mean, you have no idea what he's gonna do uh, from one play to the next. I mean, and he just
Yeah.
barrels people over when he's running, which is awesome to see. I don't know if you saw that, but he threw the interception the other day. He has this hurt right elbow, throws an interception the other day. And then like as the guy is like going down, he like jumps into the middle of a pile to like hit the guy as he's going down with his lead right shoulder. And you're just sitting there thinking, I mean, obviously this guy loves football and the passion's awesome, but you might want to just tone it down a little bit here. You're the franchise here, and
Yeah. True football
but
guy.
I do love to see it though. I mean, yes, he is a true football guy.
He is so fun to watch. There's no doubt about it. I
Yeah,
mean, I've
unbelievable to watch.
just physically imposing. Like you said, he doesn't take shit out there, and yeah, I mean, he doesn't try to slide or run out of bounds. He's taking guys on. That's
Mhm.
awesome to see. It's an old
Yeah,
school mentality.
he's huge.
Huge. Huge arm. I mean, we've seen him make some of those just unbelievable throws. I hate that. I know it's sort of his mentality. I hate the interceptions. Um, the fumble against the Vikings to lose that game. Part of the reason they lost that game, the fumble at the 1 yard line. But yeah, some of the mistakes I would prefer him not to have at this point. I mean, he was probably the MVP if you took a poll 3 weeks ago, but the last 3 weeks have kind of hurt him. But I have him at number 3 as well. I mean, this was my biggest debate, him and the guy at number 2. I really went back and forth quite a bit. But yeah, I just, he hasn't won the game yet in the
Hmm.
playoffs like these other 2 guys have in front of them. There's a game to get to the game, and I just have to see that. But love Josh Allen. So number 2, I'll go. I have Joe Burrow. Burrow's just awesome. He's just an awesome football player, and he's had some games this year where he's thrown multiple picks, but you can always count on him throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns in that same game because it seems like um, if he has a poor start, he can really figure out a way to make up for it, correct his mistakes. I don't know, man. He just makes the plays. He's makes all the throws. He's got great skill guys around him in Cincinnati. I think he's weighed down by a bad head coach myself. I don't really believe in Zach Taylor, probably as a human being too. But no, I love Burrow. He at minimum I think he's number 3 on this list, but I have him at 2. I'll be interested to see if you have him higher.
I don't. I have him at 2.
Okay.
It's impossible to have him higher.
Okay.
I think that. Now I will say this. I do think that he. I mean, obviously Mahomes is number 1. We now know that on both of our lists, Mahomes is number 1, and it's hard to not have him at number 1. Um, but I do think that when it's all said and done, Burrow might wind up having a better career than Mahomes. And I know that you think that's a hot take, and I don't think that's the first time that I've said this. I truly do believe that. I think that the one thing I love about Burrow is his attitude and that he's shown that he can play in cold weather and succeed. And I think that's such Allen also has that he plays in cold weather. I just think that that is such an advantage over the teams that have to come in there. And if the Bengals, who are an ascending team, I mean, I know that they went to the Super Bowl last year, but nobody thought that they were going to. That was kind of a surprise. So,
Sure.
this year and maybe the next coming years after that are kind of supposed to be their window, at least this window. Um, I, it's going to be kind of like Foxborough used to be, where teams are going to be coming in there and it's going to be cold in January and it's going to be hard to win there.
Yeah.
So I really do think that he has kind of the way that the team is built with Higgins and Boyd and Chase. That he has all the weapons that he needs. I really do think he's set up for a significant amount of success. Like you said, if he can get a coach in there that can kind of maximize his talents and bring a scheme in there that fits him the best, I truly do think that he could have one of the better careers
Yeah.
that's ever been had. I just really, really like him.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it even more impressive is I really do think he's weighed down by Zach Taylor's incompetence as a coach. Now, I know they went to the Super Bowl last year, but
Mhm.
which sometimes makes me wonder about the importance of head coach in the NFL and if it's more of a coordinator-driven league more than anything, especially offensively. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm with you on most of those takes. I don't think he's going to have a better career than Mahomes because Mahomes is on his absolute historic pace statistically. And we'll talk about it in a second. I just don't. I don't think he can. I don't see him at the same level. Like, I guess it could change. Something could change over the next 5 years. But um, yeah, I'm super impressed by Burrow. Great player. Again, I coming out of LSU as the number one pick, I thought he'd be good. I didn't expect him to be this good. So.
I mean, he's completing 69% of his passes, and still, as we talked about last year, still getting sacked as much as any quarterback in the league. So still constantly under duress, and that to me is even more impressive. And we were talking about Allen's ability to rush, but if we're just talking about rushing touchdowns, Burrow and Allen both have 4 rushing touchdowns this year. So I doubt that I'm not saying that Burrow's the rusher that Allen is, but if touchdowns are the metric of a quarterback, a running quarterback, or however you want to say it, um, I mean that's another thing he has going for him. I just like his decision making as well and his accuracy. I just think he's maybe the most accurate quarterback in the league. And
That's fair. Yeah, very accurate. All right, number one, Pat Mahomes. We both have him.
mhm.
I feel like his floor is just it's higher than anyone else's. I always know what I'm getting with him. Sunday night game against the Chargers, they get a late score around I don't know 140 left, and then my first thought was, there's no way they're going to win this game. Too much time, and it makes it look so easy. Um, again, all that being said, with his offense and Andy Reid led, coaching. I mean, and all the skill guys. They lost Tyreek Hill. I mean, what the biggest deep threat in the league, and he's the MVP. I think it's wildly impressive. I feel like, I'm a big NBA guy. I feel like we've gotten to the point where he's in that LeBron stage where you could argue that he could be MVP every year, probably the next 2, 3, 4 years, just statistically speaking. There's going to be some sort of voter fatigue, but I think he's well on his way to win the MVP this year. He just has that. He has that uncanny ability to make plays within the pocket, step up, get out of the pocket. He's terrifying when he gets out of the pocket. He's making plays on the run. Um, I don't know what else to say. I think he's ridiculous to watch, and I'm just amazed by him the more I watch him. I'm all about Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, he's ever since, I remember when they were playing Alex Smith and you were hearing rumblings of just wait until next year, Mahomes is going to come out and, even I believe Alex Smith was like, yeah, I'm not going to be here next year.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
he's just, he's pretty astonishing. And he just, like you said, without Tyreek Hill, uh, to honestly be having a better year this year than what he had last year. I think what it is last year people figured out the whole, you know, deep pass over the top game, and that's kind of Tyreek's bag, at least in
Yeah.
that offense it was. Um, and then they kind of tooled around and worked a little bit more of the intermediate passing game, which has opened up the deep passing game. And he just looks so good. He just makes such good decisions, and he has that like kind of gunslinger aspect to him, like Allen does, with better decision making.
Yeah.
Um, and he does run better than what people give him credit for.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think he certainly is going to go down as a historical quarterback. I think already would go down as a historical quarterback right now if something tragic were to happen. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I
Just
think
sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're okay. I just think he and Burrow are the most set up to have outstanding, like extraordinary careers with where they're set up now. Obviously, him with Andy Reid, that's the biggest thing for me that I'm interested to figure out. I'm not saying that he's a scheme quarterback. I'm not saying Mahomes is a scheme quarterback, but he
No.
has had Andy Reid his entire career, kind of like Brady had Belichick. And I'm not saying that Brady was Brady because of Belichick, but I'm saying that the two combined together, almost like the Power Rangers, are like, this ultimate force that, you know,
No.
really just seem to really mesh well together and produce the best of each other. So, if at some point he doesn't have Andy Reid and he, is capable of performing as well or better, I mean, I think that can only help his legacy if he has Andy Reid the entire time and wins 3 or 4 more Super Bowls. I mean, his legacy is going to be just fine like that as well. So, and he's a likable guy,
Is
which makes it all the much better.
for his career, he's basically got a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So
Mm.
tons of touchdowns, few mistakes. This year, in fact, he's right at 4-to-1, 28-7
Mm-hmm.
touchdown to interception ratio on the year, averaging per game over 320 yards passing per game. Like I said, the floor is just so high for him. You're shocked when something happens where he doesn't have a good game or he throws a couple picks. Um, he's just in the zone and he's unbelievable to watch. I was kind of was waiting for the Burrow piece where you were going to have him number one over Mahomes and we were going to have an issue. But I'm glad we see eye to eye at least on that front. For the most part, the lists were similar. I think the Herbert factor was the biggest discrepancy really of all of them. But we had all the same guys in the top 10. We didn't have
Mm-hmm.
anyone any different. We just had them ordered differently. Who's most likely for you that's not in that top 10 to break into that list, say, if you had to reevaluate middle of next season?
Uh, wow. I think that's an even harder question, honestly,
It is hard.
than um, I mean, I don't dislike Fields. I don't think he's a great passer. But obviously his legs are crazy. Eventually they're going to figure that out, though, and he's not going to be able to run for 130 yards every game. So, I mean, he is, if he gets better as a passer, I also don't think he has much of a team around him either. So I would be very interested to see him with actual weapons. He's possible. Cousins could eventually make his way into that. The problem with this is that I don't necessarily trust Cousins in a big
Nobody
game.
does.
So
Nobody does.
so and I kind of wanted to talk about the guys that weren't on our list that were surprising, and some of these guys could. I think Stafford could find his way back onto the list if he starts playing better. I mean, I don't. it's hard to think that the guy that was a Super Bowl winning quarterback last year is not one of the 10 most trusted quarterbacks in the year. This year, it's odd. It's been
It
an odd
is.
year for him. The same with like Russell Wilson, all of a sudden just disappearing and not being a good quarterback anymore, with no evident like physical ailments whatsoever, just obvious mental deficiencies all of a sudden, or maybe not all of a sudden, but just now coming to light. Um, I think Trevor Lawrence has a possibility to be good.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it seems like they're starting to get pieces around him, but I still don't think the offensive line is all that great. So they give him 2 or 3 more years, just let it slow down just a little bit more for him. He could be good.
Yeah. Lawrence has the tools. He again. I don't know what it is. Something seems like it's missing. I mean, added weapons.
And there actually was one person that almost went on my list, and this is probably the person that 100% will be on the list next year, is probably Deshaun Watson. But
Mm, sure.
I can't put him on the list right now because he hasn't played football in almost 18 months. So he might not be the same person. But if he is, he's obviously probably top five on this list.
True. Yeah, yeah, he was unbelievable for the Texans. Even when they got really bad there at the end, he was still producing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had Fields as one of my guys that could break into this list. It's not you could call it a homer pick, but it's not. I've seen enough. Yeah, the passing is still a question mark, but I don't think that's totally on him. I think that's there was this argument as Bears fans after the first few games, we're like, oh, let's design our offense a little bit more after the Ravens, more design runs. Now I feel like we've gotten too far that way after this last game with the Falcons when Fields ran for 15 times. That to me that was a little too much. Now he's banged up. So I'd like to see that somewhere between 7 and 10 design runs, more passes. I just want to see the last few games more 30 passes a game. I just want to see them develop that a little bit more. And you're right, the line and the receivers aren't good, so it's kind of hard to judge where he's at here. Um, Guys that interest me. I think I've seen a couple games from Kenny Pickett that I feel like he might be decent. Really early on in his career, he played really pretty well against the Bengals the other day. Made some good throws. Um, Again, you're just trying to project here. Um, Kyler, wow, what a 180 from maybe the middle of last year when the Cardinals were on a run and he was an MVP candidate to right now where he's becoming one of the more unlikable guys in the league. There's always some sort of argument he has with Cliff Kingsbury every week, it seems. Um, and his play on the field has been pretty inconsistent, and it seems like he's running less as well. And it seems like Kyler's really one of these guys that has fallen in the last year or so. I don't know what's going to happen with him, honestly.
He doesn't look good. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Kyler Murray personally. I think I had him pretty low down on our list last year. Um, what interests me is somebody went through last year's games after Call of Duty was released. I guess he's a big Call of Duty player,
Mm,
and basically Call of Duty has what are called like double XP weekends where you get more points and you can level your guns up and things like that. And they basically went and looked at his stats from when those weekends were, where he would say like have been playing instead of studying, and it was always had a terrible game during those points. So that was kind of like the running joke for a while, was that Kyler's struggling or he's not getting his rehab done as quickly right now because the new Call of Duty's out and he's at home playing, or which is always funny to me. But no, I mean, the whole Kingsbury thing, and it's again, like I was talking about earlier, with, it's an offense that nobody had seen before, that they were kind of bringing from college. And now we're seeing a little bit of the reasons as to maybe why previously it hasn't worked. You don't have the space. in the NFL that you do in college. The athletes are just too fast.
Hmm.
They just close space too much. So you're never going to have the same amount of space in the NFL that you do in college. No matter how you try to scheme it around, people just close much faster. Um, One of the things that I'm actually interested to hear your opinion on is the whole Garoppolo and Trey Lance situation. So, you know, it would not surprise me in the slightest if San Francisco goes out and wins Super Bowl this year. They look fantastic. They have every weapon in the book, and we obviously know that they have a defense. So, what happens if they go and win the Super Bowl? This is the last year of Jimmy G's contract. You have to resign him, right?
Gosh, that's yeah. What a situation. I mean,
Like,
I felt like they were going to win it last year. They had a lead against the Rams in the fourth quarter, blew that. I liked this team in the preseason with Lance, but then I gotta say I liked them better to win it all when Lance went down early and Garoppolo came in. Now he's had his issues, but it seems like he's rounding into form here. Like you said, the weapons after they got McCaffrey are ridiculous with Debo and Kittle and Ayuk is finally starting to become a real trusted guy, and that offensive line is great, and the defense is just it's scary good. So yeah, they could easily win it all. Man, what a situation if that takes place. What do you do with Jimmy G? I mean, you don't really know what you have with Trey Lance. That's the thing. I mean, you haven't. He just hasn't had enough time on the field. He had what the first game against the Bears, and then he got hurt in the second game, and we saw a little bit of him last season. Hugely athletic guy. Just seems to be really raw, a bit inaccurate, but it looks like some of the tools are there. But I don't know, man. Jimmy Jesus seems to work with this team, seems to work with Shanahan's offense. It'd be hard for them to say goodbye if they somehow make a Super Bowl run. I gotta say, out of the NFC right now, I mean, that's the team I wouldn't want to play for sure.
oh, agreed, 100%. I think they have as good of a chance if anybody to win Super Bowl. Honestly, they're just their defense is so nasty, and I mean, what does Garoppolo have to do? Dump the ball to Christian McCaffrey, dump the ball to Debo,
Yeah.
throw it across the middle to Kittle. Every once in a while, take a deep pass to Ayuk, hand the ball off 18 times to Eli Mitchell so that they don't have to run CMC into the ground and get him hurt. I mean, they they're insane. We were talking about how defense is kind of like on the come up, but there are a few offenses that are really, really special this year. Miami's obviously pretty insane. San Francisco's pretty crazy. Um, and the one that actually surprises me, and I'm not saying they're necessarily like a great team, but I think offensively they just have insane firepower if they're clicking on all cylinders. Is Detroit. Detroit is crazy if they're. I mean, their offensive line is insanely good. They
Yeah.
have two. They have a running back for every situation you can imagine. I mean, Jamal Williams is going to just smash into the end zone if you're at the goal line, and it, Swift, if healthy and playing well, is a firecracker on anything. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, did I say his name right? I think I
Yes,
said
I
his
think
name
so.
right.
Yeah.
Is one of the biggest surprises to me on any team. I didn't think anything of him coming out of the draft, and he's a stud. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, Detroit could still sneak in as a wild card. I mean, they're not out of it yet. I think yardage wise, I showed them as the sixth ranked offense in the NFL. I mean, that's frankly pretty surprising. Golf is not the long term answer there. Clearly, I don't know what their plans are. They're not. I don't know if they're really going to be high enough in the draft to consider any of those guys that are coming out, like a C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or Will Levis, any of these guys. But Dan Campbell's turned around. I like him. That's a football guy right there for sure.
absolutely.
But it feels like he's changing the culture a little bit there. So good for him. Um, yeah, that was my last point. Was kind of talking about some of these guys coming into the draft or coming to the NFL through the draft. Stroud, Bryce Young. It seems like the Panthers and the Texans are going to probably be the top two picks. So in some order, those guys are going to go 1, 2. I think Levis probably goes to the top 10. He seems to be a Josh Allen type, hugely imposing physically. I don't think he's had the best system in Kentucky there to help him develop, but I think his raw talent alone will get him drafted in the top 10. So we'll see if kind of what happens there from that standpoint. You guys come in the league, but man, I wouldn't be surprised if 6 or 8 of the quarterbacks are starting now or not starting next year. I mean, who knows what happens with Zach Wilson, the situation in Washington with Heineke now unseating Wentz, which clearly should have happened, officially a while ago. He's a good player. I don't know if you want him as your
I like Heineke.
He's so fun to watch. He is so
Yeah.
fun to watch. I mean, is he like a franchise guy? I don't know, but he wins games and he makes plays and it's entertaining. Yeah, so we'll see if there's a lot of turnover with some of these starters going forward. Um, but man, quarterback is always fascinating to analyze. So it's fun to do that.
I was looking at this, and one of the things I think that stood out to me is, aside from Rodgers and Brady, these are all young guys,
Hmm.
and for them to be, for 8 of the top 10 to be, I mean, Dak is a little getting a little more long in the tooth, but not necessarily. Um, I'd say the league is in a good place. If this is a quarterbacks league, I'd say the league is in a fairly good place.
Yeah,
So that was one of the things that kind of stood out to me, is that
yeah,
we had our era of Manning, Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, and I think everybody was a little bit concerned. You throw Roethlisberger in there and Rivers, I think everybody was a little bit concerned that the quarterback play was going to go down after that. That was the golden era of quarterbacks, and to me, it was. I mean, that's when I think of a quarterback, I think of a guy that sits in the pocket and just slings it out there. But the game's changing, and these are 8 great guys that I think really are going to make the game exciting for the next 10 or 15 years. So,
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. I think it is a lot of guys between the age of 22 and 26 or 7 that it's going to be
mhm.
fun to watch them grow and get better here. All right, Zach. Quarterback breakdown, top 10, all that. Fun to talk about all that with you tonight, and look forward to the next time you come on.
Yeah, excellent. I had a great time.
Your best bets on Facebook, Instagram. Check out our YouTube channel as well. We should have a couple shows next week as well. And thanks for tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll catch you next time.